Welcome to Pankinen Financial Perspective with Ashton Pankinen from Pankinen Financial Group. Planning for your financial future means navigating challenges like market volatility, inflation, and retirement income. Pankinen Financial Perspective is here to help by addressing common financial concerns, sharing valuable strategies, and exploring ways you can work toward your financial goals. Now let's get started with Pankinen Financial Perspective.
Hello and welcome to Pankinen Financial Perspective. My name is Ashton Pankinen from Pankinen Financial Group. If you'd like more information about what you hear during our show today, give us a call at 952-873-2703 or visit us online at pankinenfinancial.com. That's PANKONIN financial.com. And while at my website, click on our radio page to check out past shows and to subscribe to our program on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon Music. Also, while at my page, click the link at the top to get the latest retirement guide. Today, we're digging into a topic that's core to everyone's financial confidence, retirement planning. Now, retirement can feel like a distant idea for some and a source of stress for others. But the truth is this: we believe a solid retirement plan isn't just about saving money. It's about working towards making sure the life you envision later on actually becomes your reality. And helping us break down the importance of retirement planning today is my friend and co-host, Tony Shore.
Well, happy to be here as always, Ashton. And I love that this week we're building off an article that breaks retirement planning down into something that's a bit more practical, not just big ideas. But this is going to be a framework that I think our listeners out there can actually use. So that's good. I just got back myself from a financial conference. It was very inspiring, and got to meet, we were talking before the show, I got to meet John Taffer of Bar Rescue. Yeah. He's turned, he's been hired not just on Bar Rescue, but businesses hire him to turn them around if they're failing. Like big Fortune 500 companies, if they have a division or a business they own that's not doing so well, they bring him in. And the first two things he works on, the main thing he does to turn them around, he said, is people waste time. By the time I leave, they're going to have 30 to 40% more time and be 30 to 40% more efficient because I'm eliminating meetings. I'm telling them you have to make decisions. You don't talk about making a decision. You make the decision and you move on, and you don't make excuses when something goes wrong. I thought that was inspirational, really.
Yeah, it sounds like it was. And I guess you can apply that to retirement planning too.
Yeah.
If you don't waste your time, get in, make a plan and stick to it.
Yeah, exactly. and it ties right into what you're talking about today, I think. So that's good. But how have you been, Ashton?
I've been great. Yeah, we're back in the swing of things. We're past the Christmas break and Christmas vacation and all that. And we had some nice time off, but now we're kind of ramping up for the new year here and meeting with a lot of clients, doing our annual reviews and tax planning, I guess, too, at this time of year. So.
Yeah. What's funny is the two times of year that you do reviews and tax planning are the end and the beginning. So people, it's better to do it now so you don't wait until the end of the year, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's good. Okay. So where do you want to start?
Yeah, well, today we're going to focus on an article from Kiplinger headlined "The 5 Pillars of Retirement Planning from a Financial Planner." And it highlights key areas you want to have covered so you're not just hoping things will work out, but strategically planning for retirement you want.
Well, and 5 pillars, it sounds like we're building a financial fortress or something here. I like it. So I assume this is more than just telling our listeners to start saving. It's actually about covering all the bases so people can work toward living the retirement they picture instead of just wondering if they'll run out of money, right?
Yeah, and that's the heart of this conversation, from taxes and investments to income planning, healthcare considerations, and even estate planning. When you think of retirement like a house, there are 5 pillars of the foundation that keeps everything stable.
Yeah. And I know you want to talk about each one of these. We're going to tackle them one at a time so our listeners can walk away with real steps that they can take and not just ideas. So I'm excited to get into this.
Yeah, me too, Tony. Let's start with that first pillar, which is tax planning and why it matters so much as you build toward retirement. taxes, Tony, in my experience, are one of the most overlooked and potentially most expensive parts of retirement planning. Many retirees, taxes end up being their single largest expense. And that's especially true for people who did a great job saving over the years in tax deferred accounts like 401ks and traditional IRAs.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's great. Now, it always surprises people. They think I've saved well, I've done things right. And then they don't realize how much of that money still hasn't been taxed yet. Right.
Yeah. Bingo. I just met with a client the other day and we were doing some income planning and, we said, hey, we got to withhold 22% federal and 8% state. And he's like, holy cow, I've got to give away 30% to taxes. And so, those accounts can be incredibly helpful while you're working, but once you retire and start taking withdrawals, the tax picture can change quickly. And so again, we want to see how big those tax impact can be. They're often not talked about nearly enough in retirement conversations, those tax implications.
Yeah, and I wonder why that is. I mean, if it's such a major expense, you'd expect it to be front and center.
Yeah, I think part of it is that taxes feel complicated, and part of it is that it's very personal because everyone's situation is different. So it's an area our firm takes very seriously because we believe thoughtful tax planning can make a big difference. In many cases, simply being more tax aware and just understanding how that tax code applies to your situation can potentially result in tax savings over the course of your retirement. So again, that's money you get to keep and use instead of sending it out to the door to Uncle Sam.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people don't realize those accounts, like you said, they're employer sponsored retirement accounts like traditional 401ks, traditional IRAs, 403Bs, TSPs. They think, oh, I've got $100,000 in there. I've got $1 million saved for retirement. That's $1 million I've got to spend. No, 30% of it is probably going to Uncle Sam.
Yeah. Yep.
It's a joint account. It's a joint account. Yeah,
for sure.
So this isn't about doing anything extreme or complicated. It's just about being intentional, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's about planning ahead, understanding where your retirement income will come from, and knowing how different sources of income may be taxed. So the goal isn't to eliminate taxes because, again, that's unrealistic. Uncle Sam's going to get some, but it's just to minimize the unnecessary surprises of those taxes.
Yeah. I think that's good. So for someone who's listening right now, what's the right question to ask themselves when it comes to their taxes in retirement?
Yeah, a good place to start is simply this. Have I thought about how taxes will affect my retirement income, not just this year, but over my overall retirement? From there, we can start talking about what steps might help ensure taxes are planned for properly. And when we talk about tax planning, the goal really comes down to one simple idea: working to minimize the amount you pay in taxes over your lifetime. And that's it. That's the objective.
Well, and that sounds simple, but I'm guessing the how is where things can get a little more complicated.
Yeah, exactly, Tony. Yeah, you got it. The way you do that is by understanding the opportunities available to you. The tax code is full of different opportunities, but most people aren't aware of what applies to their situation. So that's why, this area takes some intentional planning. We regularly review a wide range of tax saving strategies with clients, not because everyone should use all of them. Again, everybody's situation is a little different, but because knowing what's on the table helps you make appropriate decisions.
True. So this isn't a one size fits all checklist. It's more about finding the right combination to use, right, Ashton?
Yeah, correct, Tony. And one place where that really shows up is tax preparation itself. Your retirement planning team should include your chosen tax preparer as well. So there's real value in having someone who specializes in tax planning review your tax return along with the person filing it. So, a lot of times we collaborate and work with accountants and have conversations with them. And hey, here's an opportunity we see to save some taxes. Is this going to fit our client's situation? And so again, we often collaborate and communicate with those CPAs to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And there is a difference between tax preparation and tax planning. And
Yes.
People don't necessarily always understand that. The way I always illustrate it, Ashton, is tax preparation is the rear view mirror and
Yep.
tax planning is the windshield looking forward.
No, that's a good way to put it. I haven't heard it that way, but yeah, it's, again, those tax preparers, they're going to punch in the numbers from last year. And then again, can we put together a plan that's going to help you save in either last year or this year? Just depends on the situation.
Yeah. And you yourself and your team there at Pankinen Financial, you often look further ahead, like what are the tax implications going to be in retirement? That's really tax
for sure.
planning. Yeah. For the future.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that's good. And that makes sense. And having more than one set of trained eyes on it helps too.
Yeah, I agree. Another major tax issue retirees need to plan for is that required minimum distribution, or RMD for short. And so again, you mentioned looking out further into retirement. That's one of those things that are going to be at age 73 or 75, depending on when you were born. And it's one of those things the government actually forces you to act and take money out of your accounts. And so once RMDs begin, you're required to take the money out of those tax deferred accounts, like we talked about, the traditional IRA, traditional 401k. And then people with larger balances, let's say $1 million or more, those withdrawals can significantly increase your taxable income because you have to take, $40,000, $50,000 out of there.
Wow. That can create a domino effect too, can it?
Yeah, it can, and that higher income can push you into a higher tax bracket. So again, more taxes, but it also could make more of your Social Security taxable and even increase Medicare premiums. And so again, that's why planning for RMDs earlier, not later, can be so important.
Okay. What about Roth conversions? That's one way to help with this tax situation. And that's something people hear a lot about. You've talked about it on past shows.
Yeah. And again, they do. And for good reason. Roth conversion is simply moving money from a tax deferred account into a tax-free account, a Roth IRA. And so again, that Roth IRA is going to be tax-free. And then what we typically do is we move some money from a traditional IRA or traditional 401k into it, and we pay the tax on it now where we choose to pay tax. And you want to be sure you're doing it in a way that makes sense for your tax situation and that doesn't trigger unnecessary taxes or penalties. And so this is definitely not a do it blindly strategy. Again, we want to look at maximizing tiers of your tax bracket. A lot of times, if we can fill up that 12% or less buckets of taxes. Again, nobody likes paying taxes, but if we can pay it at 12% instead of 22%, that's a lot of times what we'll do is fill up those buckets. And again, everyone's situation is different. Sometimes we fill that 22% as well. It just depends on the situation.
Yeah, interesting. And you want to minimize that tax burden as much as possible, especially, looking ahead and minimizing it in retirement. And charitable giving can also play a role here, correct?
Yeah, it can. One of the big things is we have like qualified distributions. We also have donor funds that you can do. And so if charitable giving is something that's a goal of yours, we want to make sure that we look at that and manage that. And again, these QCDs, qualified charitable distributions, are for anybody 70 and a half and older. So I just had a client the other day who said, hey, I give $2,500 to my church every year. I said, hey, we can do that out of your IRA and not pay tax on it.
Nice.
And so, and again, there's different tricks like that are available. And I don't know if you want to call them loopholes because they're designed to be there, but there's different tax strategies to try and minimize those taxes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's huge, but it sounds like it could be a lot to keep track of.
Yeah, it can be. Again, you want to make sure you're keeping track of this QCD and that's why you have a professional by your side.
Yeah. That's why you work with a financial services professional like yourself, because you have the tools and all that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think the big takeaway here is that tax planning isn't about reacting. It's more about being proactive then. And again, this is a lot to keep track of, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be. And this is why tax planning relies on more than just intuition. You want to have the right software, reports, and analyst tools to model different scenarios before decisions are made. Some financial service advisors use tools to run multiple scenarios so clients can see how these different choices might impact their taxes over time, not just this year. So again, we're not just looking at what our tax burden is this year. We're looking over the next 20, 30 years of retirement.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that once again, you want to be proactive with these things, right?
Yeah, indeed. When taxes are planned for thoughtfully, they become a manageable part of retirement, not just an unpleasant surprise. And again, nobody likes paying taxes, but again, if we can minimize those over the long term. So let's move on to the next pillar, investment planning. And when the main question people ask who are close to retirement is a simple one. Are you taking on more risk than you actually need to?
And I'm guessing the answer is often yes, correct?
Yeah, most of the time it is. Retirement is a different phase of life. You no longer have decades to recover from major market downturn. You can't take another 2008 if you're right on the edge of retirement. And so we want to think of the ways risks show up in your portfolio that needs to change.
Yeah. And it's not just about swinging for the fences anymore then, right?
Yeah, precisely. At this stage, it's about protecting what you've worked so hard to build while still allowing for reasonable growth. Again, we can't take it and shove it under a mattress. We got to try and keep up with that not so silent killer at times, inflation. So we often say you want to plan not just a collection of investments. Again, it's no good to have just investments if you don't have a plan in place. And so if you've saved enough, you don't need massive returns. You just need consistency. And in retirement, it's better to be the turtle than the hare.
Yeah, definitely. Now, before we keep going with our conversation, now might be a good time to remind our listeners out there how they can schedule a complimentary, no charge, no obligation consultation to answer questions, get questions answered, and get more information, get a plan in place, or a second opinion on where they're at.
Yeah, for sure. And best way is just to give our office a call, 952-873-2703. Again, that number is 952-873-2703, or visit us online, pankoninfinancial.com. That's PANKONIN financial.com. Scheduling a consultation only takes a few minutes, and we're always happy to work around your schedule. And again, this is the time of year where you're meeting with accountants. And again, they're mostly tax preparers. And so, we'd be more than happy to sit down and see if there's anything we can do to help with tax planning for you.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, you want to minimize that tax burden in retirement and
yes,
plan ahead.
Sure.
Plan ahead on how that's going to happen. Actually, one of my biggest takeaways so far, Ashton, from today's show is that slow and steady really does win the race. And that's what my mom always used to say to me, slow and steady wins the race, son.
Yeah, and it often does. Another important part of investment planning is just being aware of fees. Many people are paying more than they realize through investment expenses.
Yeah, and fees can quietly eat into your returns over time, can't they?
Yeah, they do. And, you want to be mindful of the things like expense ratios. They do matter. But again, net overall performance is what can help overcome some of those. But we always look closely at what clients are paying for fees and whether the costs are justified. We want to minimize those unnecessary fees. It can be one of the easiest ways to help improve long-term outcomes. And one of the things we look at too, especially variable annuities, the overall expenses with M&E and other investment expenses and riders inside of these different products can be anywhere from 3 to 4%. And so you just want to make sure the fees are minimized and, again, necessary fees. I guess.
Yeah. You want to look at those and make sure you're not in something you shouldn't be. And I know you look at that closely when people come in. You can say, okay, this does make sense for you, or based on your goals and needs, this really isn't good. You might want to, do something about that. So what about managing investments yourself versus working with a financial services professional?
Yeah, that's an important consideration. Many individual investors tend to underperform over time, often because of emotional decisions. Again, human nature is to sell or buy high and sell low when you want to be doing the opposite of that. So working with someone who does this every day and who focuses on managing risk, staying disciplined in your plan can be incredibly valuable, especially during volatile markets. It's really easy when the market just keeps going up to say, oh yeah, I could do this on my own. But it's when we have that volatility that, the advisor really earns their keep. And so next up is income planning. So when you retire, paychecks stop from your employer, but now it's time to create your own.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the biggest mental shifts that retirees have to make. It's almost like you flip it on its head, or it's a 180, because in our working years, we're taking that income and creating savings, and that's our main focus.
Yep.
But in retirement, we have to take that savings and create income, right?
For sure. Yeah. And it really is one of the biggest shifts for retirees. And that's one of the biggest fear comes is running out of money.
Yeah.
Again, people fear that more than death.
Yeah.
Statistically, I guess. And so, people often ask, how do I turn what I've saved into that income that lasts for the rest of my life? And how do I do that while dealing with things like market swings, taxes, inflation, and longevity?
Yeah, because that's a lot of moving parts.
No, it is. And that's why income planning has to be intentional. Social Security decisions are a big piece of this. When you claim, how it's taxed, how it fits with your other income sources can make a meaningful difference. And, we often talk about the three legs of the stool. One of those being the biggest leg usually is that Social Security. Another leg is that personal savings, whether that's 401k, IRAs, Roth IRAs, and then pensions. Again, not a lot of people have those anymore, but we can use that third leg and create pensions from your personal savings to give you that lifetime income stream.
Yeah. And like you said, with Social Security, it is really important when you take it, but it's not just that. It's also how it fits into the bigger picture, right?
Yeah, for sure. Again, you want to make sure you're maximizing that, especially married couple, because you do have many options when it comes to when and how to take that Social Security.
Yeah.
So, and that's where we can do a complete Social Security analysis. It helps people understand their options and avoid leaving money on the table. Another key factor is inflation. So if you need $5,000 a month today, that same lifestyle could cost you closer to $10,000 a month 20 years from now. And so again, your income plan needs to grow over time without putting you at risk of running out of money.
Yeah. And then there are pensions for those who might still have them, right?
Yeah. And again, as we mentioned, not everybody has a pension anymore, but they can be a great benefit. But they do come with decisions. There's tax implications, survivor options, whether to take a lump sum or just carefully consider taking that monthly distribution.
Yeah. Yeah. And withdrawals matter too, like when you're taking money out of your various accounts too.
Yeah. You got it. Which accounts to pull from when and can significantly impact taxes. So a thoughtful, tax efficient withdrawal strategy can help you keep more of what you saved. And so when we look at that, sometimes we pull from the Roth IRA tax free instead of the traditional IRA to keep you, below that next tier of tax brackets.
Sure.
Healthcare planning is another major pillar, especially as people live longer without necessarily being healthier.
Yeah. Yeah. Longevity is a huge risk. People are living longer, so healthcare is going to cost more. And I think healthcare costs can be one of the biggest wild cards in retirement and probably the biggest expense out of pocket. You're going to pay more in healthcare than probably anything else in retirement.
Yeah, it can, and you also want to be able to understand Medicare Parts A, B, C, and D. It's critical once you reach age 65. Choosing the right combination of coverage can help manage those costs and avoid surprises. And, we have specialists in our office who specialize in the health insurance. And so if you have questions, if you're going to be turning 65, make sure you reach out to us and we can help you make those decisions.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good. And long-term care is a big concern too, isn't it? I mean, I'm dealing with that with my parents right now, as you know. So
yeah. And I mean, many people have seen family members go through it firsthand, such as yourself, Tony. And, the key takeaway here isn't fear, it's preparation,
Yeah.
You don't want to be scared of it. You just want to prepare for it. And there are many ways to plan for the possibility of long-term care, but we believe that it's important to have a plan together.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the most important thing right there. Have a plan. And there are out of pocket expenses, even if you have coverage, right? That's what a lot of people might not realize.
Yeah. You think you have Medicare or whatever, you're not going to have any out of pocket expenses. And, it doesn't just stop at the premiums. Planning for those expenses while still allowing for your money to grow is an important balancing act.
Yeah, I mean, you've got deductibles, you've got copays, you've got those premiums. But what about people for healthcare costs? Really expensive for people who retire before 65, before Medicare age, right?
Yeah, early retirement adds another layer. So if you retire before Medicare eligibility, you may need private health insurance, which can be expensive. And there's also income and tax considerations during those years that can benefit from proactive planning. If you make under a certain income, you can get some tax credits. And so it's important to plan for that if you're going to be retiring before 65.
Sure.
And then the final pillar of retirement planning here is estate planning, and purpose planning kind of goes hand in hand with that.
Okay. And I think this is the area especially that people tend to avoid is estate planning or planning what to do after their passing. No one likes to think about it.
Yeah, no, they do, Tony. And even though it's incredibly important, people still tend to avoid this. And everyone over 18 should have some basic documents in place, like wills and power of attorney. And trust also makes sense in certain situations.
Yeah. And this preparation goes way beyond paperwork, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And, you want to prepare for widowhood. It's critical. One spouse will likely pass first. The odds of both of you going at the same time isn't that high. And so it's important that each surviving spouse knows where to turn and has things organized. Tax status changes alone can significantly increase a survivor's tax burden. The number of times I've sat across the table from a widow who, husband took care of all the finances. And then, we sit down and she brings a stack of papers and we start going through it and trying to figure it out. It would have been a lot more beneficial if we had done that before.
Yeah. Yeah. And the preparation goes beyond just the paperwork too, right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Very much so, estate planning and tax planning are closely connected when it comes to transferring wealth efficiently.
Yeah, I would say so. And that's really, really important. Beneficiaries are so important too, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Again, we want to make sure we have those individuals listed correctly for tax reasons. A lot of times I have somebody say, hey, I want to list my oldest son because he'll divvy it up between all the kids.
Yeah.
Again, there's tax consequences to that. And so we want to make sure we've got all the beneficiaries listed that we want.
Yeah. And you also talk a lot about purpose too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Retirement isn't just about numbers. It's about what you want out of this phase of life and what do you want it to look like. Some people are excellent savers, but struggle to enjoy what they've built. Others are focused on leaving a legacy. Again, purpose planning helps align your money with what matters most to you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we've had a terrific show today, Ashton. Is there anything else you want to add before we go?
Yeah. And again, it's important to sit down with an experienced financial professional. You can feel free to give our office a call. That's the best way to get a hold of us. Get a second opinion. Again, we're sitting down with our tax preparers pretty quick here. Let's put a tax plan together. So give our office a call, 952-873-2703, or visit us online at pankinonfinancial.com. That's PANKONIN financial.com.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, great show today, Ashton. Thanks for all the great information. And listeners out there, that does it for today's episode of the Pankinen Financial Perspective with our host, Ashton Pankinen.
Thank you for joining us for Pankinen Financial Perspective. Don't head into retirement without a plan for both your finances and your health. For more information, contact Ashton Pankinen at Pankinen Financial Group at 952-873-2703 or visit PankinenFinancialGroup.com. Join us again soon for another episode of Pankinen Financial Perspective. Advisory services are offered by Ashton Pankinen LLC DBA Pankinen Financial Group, an investment advisor in the state of Minnesota.
All matters discussed during the show are for informational purposes only. Each individual situation may vary and the opinions expressed here may not apply to everyone. Materials presented are believed to be from reliable sources and no representations can be made as to its accuracy. All ideas and information should be discussed in detail with one of our qualified representatives prior to implementation. We are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration, the Federal Medicare Program, or any other government agency. Calling this number will direct you to a licensed sales agent.